Queensland Nationals Senator Matt Canavan has criticised Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews over the handling of the coronavirus crisis gripping Victoria, as officials confirm links between virus outbreaks in Sydney. And the Queensland Government has banned New South Wales travellers from New South Wales COVID hotspot areas, as police at the border force turn drivers around. I spoke to Nationals Senator Matt Canavan a short time ago.
Peter, it's become very clear in the last few days that this latest wave, this second wave that is hitting us here in Australia is really a homegrown one. We've heard from the Chief Medical Officer in Victoria that the strain in Victoria is a different one. The coronavirus strain is different from what was there a few months ago. We've heard from the New South Wales Government that the strain now spreading as a result of the outbreak at the Crossroads Hotel is not linked to one in New South Wales a few months ago. And we've all seen the clear breakdown in the security arrangements at hotels in Victoria. So this is something that's come out of Melbourne. It's a second wave that's made in Melbourne under the watch of Dan Andrews. And as I say, therefore it's a man-made disaster, but a more succinct way here is it's a Dan-made disaster coming out of Victoria and unfortunately threatening now the great record we had up until this date on the coronavirus.
And of course Queensland, the Premier Palaszczuk has basically banned those people from Western Sydney who are in those COVID hotspots. And I mean, this comes off the back of the Victorian ban. The borders have been lifted, the restrictions have been lifted, but it's still not great news, is it, for tourism operators in Queensland right now?
Oh, look, it's a real concern. Notwithstanding that the Victorian border is not open to Queensland, I know, talking to local tourism businesses here in central Queensland, they've had a real fill-up over the past week after the borders reopened. Many establishments have been full of tourists. You've had the Hemsworths come up here to Queensland as well. Everyone wants to come. Everyone I talk to seems to be coming to Queensland, and that's great for our long-suffering tourism industry. But it is at risk now if we can't put a cap on this latest wave. So I applaud the efforts of the New South Wales Government to get ahead of this, because I don't want to see that border shut again.
Now the virus app, the COVID app, not quite as successful as we'd hoped?
Well, that's pretty clear. Look, I think it's absolutely worth a shot. I've still got it on my phone and encourage people to do it, because I do believe it has helped in some instances. But there's been some problems with, I think, Apple phones in particular and the access to their technology. That's something that's been experienced right around the world. Look, all governments are trying to do what we can to respond to this virus, and we're trying lots of different things in the middle of a pandemic. Some of them aren't always going to work as you'd hoped. But as I said earlier, most of the things that we've done in this country, especially the hard board closure with overseas countries, have worked very well. Now we've just got this lapse in Victoria that's costing us dearly.
I want to talk about the Ackland coal mine. Now, you're a former resources minister in the federal government. I see where a couple of right-wing Labor Party politicians, Joel Fitzgibbon, Shane Newman, Anthony Chisholm, are coming out saying, please, Premier Palaszczuk, can you please approve this mine? The mine, of course, is mired, and I mean mired, in court action. 13 years it's been going. But of course, the Court of Appeal said yes, it's now in the High Court, and it's in the High Court because of green activism. What would you say to Premier Palaszczuk about the Ackland coal mine? And we are talking about 580 jobs up for grabs here.
Absolutely, just to prove it. That's what I'd say, just to prove it. It's now taken longer for the Queensland Government to assess this project than a child takes to complete their full primary and secondary schooling. 13 years is a ridiculous amount of time to assess a single project. Keep in mind too that this is a proposal to expand an existing coal mine. It's an area that's been mined for over 100 years, and existing jobs are going to go out the door. A town of Oakey is going to be devastated unless the Palaszczuk government can do a U-turn and actually back jobs. I mean, I was down in Gladstone today with the new LNP candidate there, Ron Harding. I was talking to him about how important the coal industry is to this region, how important these jobs are to our regional communities, yet we haven't had a single state Labor MP come out and back these jobs, and that tells you a lot of the modern Labor Party who are addicted to the poison pill of green preferences over protecting their constituencies, which used to be workers.
Senator Canavan, surely they've learned, though, from the May 18 election last year, where miners and workers left the Labor Party in droves. Even Joel Fitzgibbon, he had a big scare in his seat, traditionally a very safe Labor seat, as miners defected to the One Nation Party. But Albanese's in a bit of a bind here, isn't he? Because he's from the left faction, and of course, you know, they have to, as you say, appease the Greens preferences sort of deals that they're doing. But at the same time, they realise, the right-wing Labor Party guys, that if they don't approve these mines and they don't approve projects that create jobs, they're in a lot of froth and bubble at the ballot box.
You've hit the nail on the head there, Gleeson. Some Labor MPs, especially federal MPs after last year's federal election, have got the memo. Joel Fitzgibbon has certainly got the memo that he better start fighting and defending for jobs in his electorate, or he'll be looking for a new job soon. And so they've changed their tune. But the state Labor MPs and the position of the state Queensland Labor Party here is that it's controlled by the left faction, as you pointed out. And so while Jackie Trad is no longer there as treasurer, she and her mates in the left faction are still pulling the strings behind the scenes, and that's why you get these non-decisions like we're seeing in Ackland. And we also know now, Jackie's been cleared, if the Labor Party is returned on October the 31st this year, it'll be the scariest Halloween in Queensland for some time, because Jackie Trad will be back, and she'll be back with a vengeance to try and shut down industries like coal that she doesn't like.
Now, the National Farmers Federation outlined its blueprint yesterday for the post-COVID recovery. Much of that evolved around conservation and environmental laws and streamlining green and red tape. How important is that to get this country going again?
Well, I'll give you an example, Peter. It's always good to use a real-world example. There's a project up in North Queensland at a place called Olive Downs. It's a proposal to build 2,000 hectares of farming, which is a large area, but it's not enormous in the context of the whole of the Cape York, but it'd be a very important employer, a few hundred jobs for largely Indigenous population there in the Cape. It's been held up for years with green tape, with restrictions on approvals. The current hold-up involves whether or not there are rump-tailed sheep bats there, and there's been various attempts to record the sounds of these bats. No one has ever seen one in this area. A few months ago, some Federal Department of Environment bureaucrats got very excited when they thought they had an audio tape of the bats. When they took it back for detailed echolocation assessment in Canberra, they found no, they were just normal bats. They weren't the rump sheath-tailed bats. And that project is still held up. This is ridiculous, and that's under federal environmental law. It's not good enough. We've got to do a better job of actually approving projects, not holding up these jobs, especially now that our nation is crying out for jobs, given the downturn we've seen in other parts of our economy.